Picture this. You're scrolling through declassified government documents late at night, expecting the usual dry military jargon about troop movements and logistics. Then you stumble across something that makes you question reality itself. A 31-page official Pentagon document titled Counter-Zombie Dominance Operations. Your first thought, this has to be a joke. Your second thought, the U.S. government actually spent time and resources creating a detailed plan for fighting the undead. Welcome to CONPLAN 88088, the most unusual military strategy document ever made public, and today we're going deep into every disturbing, fascinating, and surprisingly practical detail of America's official zombie apocalypse survival guide. What if I told you that buried within this document are classified sections that reference space-based operations and special technical capabilities that remain hidden from public view? What if this seemingly ridiculous plan is actually a window into how the military thinks about societal collapse, unconventional threats, and scenarios where traditional government structures completely fail? This isn't science fiction anymore. This is official U.S. military doctrine, and after today, you'll never look at zombie movies the same way again. The document that changed everything in 2011, a Freedom of Information Act request revealed something extraordinary. The Pentagon had created CONPLAN 8808811, officially titled Counter-Zombie Dominance Operations, and they wanted the public to see it. The document wasn't leaked. It was deliberately declassified with a specific notation, unclassified, to ensure maximum utility during times of crisis. Think about that phrase. The military wanted maximum utility during times of crisis. They created a zombie plan that they specifically intended for widespread distribution when society starts falling apart. This wasn't bureaucratic humor. This was strategic communication. The document opens with standard Pentagon formatting, official letterhead, proper classification stamps, routing information. Everything appears mundane until you reach the mission statement that fundamentally changes how you view government preparedness planning. To undertake military operations to preserve non-zombie humans from the threats posed by a zombie horde. Because zombies pose a threat to all non-zombie human life, hereafter referred to as humans, U.S. Tirasham will be prepared to preserve the sanctity of human life and conduct operations in support of authorities or in the absence of authorities. That final phrase is crucial. In the absence of authorities. The plan assumes complete governmental collapse. No mayors, no governors, no president. Just military commanders making life or death decisions for millions of survivors. But here's where it gets even stranger. Throughout the document, footnotes reference classified annexes that were stripped from the public version. We know these classified sections exist. We know they detail space-based operations, special technical capabilities, and response protocols for threats the military won't discuss publicly. The zombie scenarios were just the cover story. The science behind the nightmare. 5 types of zombie threats. The Pentagon didn't plan for generic Hollywood zombies shambling through shopping malls. They conducted serious threat analysis and categorized potential zombie, creating scenarios into 5 distinct classifications, each requiring different tactical responses and presenting unique challenges to military planners. Pathogenic zombies. The most realistic threat. Pathogenic zombies result from viral, bacterial, or parasitic infections that alter human behavior and physiology. The document identifies these as the most likely threat because the biological mechanisms already exist in nature. Consider rabies, one of the most zombie-like diseases currently affecting mammals worldwide. The rabies virus attacks the central nervous system, creating profound behavioral changes, increased aggression, loss of fear responses, hypersalivation, and compulsive biting behavior. Infected animals lose their survival instincts and attack anything that moves, including much larger predators. The virus is specifically designed to spread through bites, making infected animals into perfect transmission vectors. Now imagine a mutated strain of rabies that doesn't kill the host quickly, but maintains the aggressive, biting behavior while allowing the infected to remain mobile for weeks or months. The biological pathway already exists. It would just need minor modifications to create something functionally identical to movie zombies. The document also examines prion diseases, misfolded proteins that destroy nervous system tissue. Chronic wasting disease affects deer and elk populations across North America. Infected animals lose their natural fear responses, stumble through forests like zombies, and become easy prey for predators. Mountain lions actually seek out infected deer because they're easier to catch. But consuming prion, diseased tissue carries risks for the predators too. Mad cow disease represents the human equivalent. People who consume infected beef develop Creutzfeldt-Jakob disease, experiencing rapid mental deterioration, loss of motor control, and behavioral changes that include aggression and unpredictability. The symptoms progress quickly and are always fatal. Perhaps most disturbing is kuru, a prion disease found in Papua New Guinea communities that practiced mortuary cannibalism. Family members would consume the brains of deceased relatives as part of funeral rituals. Those who ate infected brain tissue developed kuru, experiencing severe mood changes, violent outbursts, and unpredictable behavior. The disease spreads exactly like zombie infections in movies through consumption of infected nervous tissue. But prions aren't the only biological threat. Parasitic organisms already demonstrate sophisticated mind control capabilities that read like science fiction, but represent documented scientific phenomena. The jewel wasp provides a perfect example of biological zombie creation. This species targets cockroaches with surgical precision, injecting venom directly into specific brain regions. The venom doesn't kill the cockroach. It eliminates the insect's survival instincts and free will. The wasp then grabs the cockroach's antenna and leads it to a prepared burrow, where the docile roach waits patiently while wasp larvae consume it alive from the inside. Ophiocordyceps fungi turn ants into literal zombie ants. Infected ants abandon their colonies and climb to elevated positions where they bite down on leaves with a death grip. The fungus consumes the ant's body and erupts from its head, raining spores on the colony below. The ant's final act spreads infection to create more zombies, exactly like movie scenarios where infected humans seek out groups of survivors. Even more unsettling, these mind control mechanisms already affect humans. Toxoplasma gondii, a single-celled parasite, currently infects between 30–50% of the global human population. Most people carry it without knowing, but research suggests infected individuals take more risks, drive more aggressively, and show measurable personality changes. The parasite appears to reduce fear responses and increase impulsive behavior. Toxoplasma evolved specifically to manipulate mammalian behavior. Infected rats and mice lose their natural fear of cats and are actually attracted to cat urine. The parasite programs rodents to get eaten, ensuring transmission to its preferred host species. The fact that it causes behavioral changes in humans suggests we're not immune to biological mind control. We're already experiencing it on a massive scale. Radiation. Environmental catastrophe scenarios. Radiation zombies result from exposure to extreme electromagnetic radiation that alters brain chemistry and cellular function. While this might sound like pure science fiction, the biological mechanisms are well documented, and the environmental triggers already exist. Solar flares bombard Earth with charged particles capable of disrupting electronic systems and biological processes. The 1859 Carrington event knocked out telegraph networks worldwide and created aurora displays visible as far south as the Caribbean. Telegraphers received electric shocks from their equipment, and some telegraph systems continued operating even after being disconnected from their power sources. A similar coronal mass ejection today would be exponentially more devastating. Our electromagnetic infrastructure is far more complex and vulnerable than 19th-century telegraph networks. But beyond the technological damage, a massive solar event could expose entire populations to radiation levels that fundamentally alter human biology. Nuclear accidents provide real-world examples of how radiation affects human behavior and physiology. Emergency responders who entered the Chernobyl reactor core experienced rapid cellular breakdown, but survivors reported unusual neurological symptoms, including hallucinations, aggressive behavior, and profound personality changes before dying. More intriguingly, radiation doesn't always kill. Wildlife in the Chernobyl exclusion zone has adapted to high radiation levels in ways that surprised scientists. Wolves in the area show genetic mutations that make them highly resistant to cancer. They've essentially evolved into a new subspecies in just a few decades. If radiation can create new types of wolves, it can theoretically create new types of humans. The military document acknowledges that hostile nations could weaponize radiation exposure to create zombie-like soldiers. Troops exposed to specific radiation levels might experience enhanced aggression, reduced fear responses, and decreased sensitivity to pain while retaining basic motor functions and following simple commands. Weaponized zombies. The intentional threat. Weaponized zombies represent perhaps the most chilling category because the technology to create them already exists. These are zombies specifically engineered for military purposes using chemical weapons, genetic engineering, or synthetic biology. During the Cold War, both superpowers developed psychochemical agents designed to incapacitate enemy forces without killing them. The U.S. Army tested BZ, a chemical compound that caused severe hallucinations, confusion, and unpredictable behavior in test subjects. Similar compounds could theoretically create zombie-like symptoms while leaving motor functions intact. Modern genetic engineering opens even more disturbing possibilities. CRISPR gene editing allows scientists to alter organisms at the genetic level with unprecedented precision. Synthetic biology creates entirely new biological systems from scratch. A hostile nation with advanced biotechnology could engineer pathogens that create controllable zombie-like soldiers. Consider the tactical advantages. Zombie soldiers don't require food, water, or rest in the traditional sense. They don't experience fear, pain, or moral hesitation. They follow simple commands without question and continue fighting until physically destroyed. From a military perspective, they represent the perfect expendable force. The document notes that weaponized zombies pose unique challenges because they're created intentionally with specific capabilities. Unlike naturally occurring zombies, weaponized variants might be designed with enhanced strength, speed, or resistance to conventional weapons. They might retain enough intelligence to use simple tools or follow complex instructions while lacking the self-preservation instincts that make humans hesitant in combat. Space zombies. The extraterrestrial threat. Space zombies originate from extraterrestrial sources or result from alien contamination of Earth's environment. While this sounds like the most far-fetched category, NASA and the military already have extensive protocols for preventing contamination from space missions. When Apollo astronauts returned from the Moon, they spent 21 days in strict quarantine. Mission planners were genuinely concerned that lunar microorganisms might prove dangerous to terrestrial life. The precaution turned out to be unnecessary. The Moon appears sterile, but the protocols established important precedents for handling extraterrestrial biological material. Real scientific research shows that organisms can survive in environments where life should be impossible. Tardigrades, microscopic animals also known as water bears, can withstand the vacuum of space, extreme temperatures, and radiation levels that would kill almost any other life form. If similar organisms exist elsewhere in the solar system, they might be fundamentally incompatible with human biology. Large asteroids or comets could carry alien microorganisms or radioactive materials to Earth. The Tunguska event in 1908 flattened over 1,000 square miles of Siberian forest. If a similar impact occurred over a populated area, any alien contamination would spread before authorities could respond. The document notes that space zombies present unique challenges because they can affect any location on Earth. Traditional quarantine procedures work only if you can identify and isolate the source of infection quickly. Extraterrestrial contamination could appear anywhere and spread rapidly before being detected. More ominously, space zombies might be resistant to terrestrial countermeasures. Earth-based diseases evolved alongside human immune systems over millions of years. Alien pathogens might exploit vulnerabilities in human biology that we don't even know exist. The military's solution for space zombie outbreaks is characteristically direct nuclear weapons. The document states that if extraterrestrial contamination cannot be contained, incineration at nuclear temperatures becomes the only viable option. Evil magic zombies. The supernatural threat evil magic zombies represent the most unusual category because they acknowledge supernatural threats that cannot be scientifically monitored, predicted, or understood using conventional methods. The document literally uses the phrase evil magic and assigns the military's chaplain corps as the primary defense against these entities. This isn't military personnel having fun with fiction. The Pentagon has a long history of investigating supernatural and paranormal phenomena. During World War II, both Allied and Axis powers maintained occult research divisions. The Nazi Ahnenerbe conducted extensive paranormal research, while Allied forces employed their own supernatural specialists. Winston Churchill consulted astrologers for strategic planning. The U.S. Army investigated psychic warfare during the Cold War through projects like Stargate, which attempted to weaponize remote viewing and telepathic communication. The military takes supernatural threats seriously enough to assign trained religious personnel as the primary response force. Chaplains receive specific training in conducting exorcisms, blessing weapons, and performing protective rituals that might prove effective against entities that don't respond to conventional weapons. The document notes that evil magic zombies might be invulnerable to traditional military responses, including nuclear weapons. The only reliable method for destroying them involves eliminating the supernatural source of their animation, which requires spiritual rather than physical combat. This represents a profound shift in military thinking. For supernatural threats, the Pentagon acknowledges that victory might require divine intervention rather than technological superiority. The 5-phase military response. When government fails, CONPLAN 8888 outlines a systematic 5-phase military response that assumes complete societal breakdown and the failure of civilian authority structures. Each phase represents an escalation of military involvement and a corresponding reduction in civilian protection. Phase 0. Shape the environment during peacetime. STEERATSROM monitors global conditions that could lead to zombie outbreaks. This includes surveillance of disease vectors, epidemiological data, and non-state actors with access to chemical or biological weapons. The military maintains relationships with international health organizations, monitors social media for outbreak reports, and tracks unusual animal die-offs or behavioral changes that might indicate emerging biological threats. Phase 0 continues until confirmed zombie activity triggers the next response level. Phase 1 and Dieter once potential zombie creating threats are identified. The military works to prevent their development or deployment. This includes diplomatic pressure on nations developing dangerous biotechnology, intelligence operations against terrorist groups seeking biological weapons, and public messaging campaigns to reduce panic. Crucially, Phase 1 includes notifying allied nations that U.S. anti-zombie preparations are not preparations for conventional warfare. The military wants to avoid triggering international conflicts due to misunderstood defensive preparations. Phase 2. Seize the initiative. When zombie outbreaks begin, The military provides support to local authorities while maintaining command structure integrity. STR establishes quarantine zones, provides security assistance to police and emergency services, and protects critical infrastructure. During Phase 2, the military still prioritizes civilian protection and works within existing governmental frameworks. However, the document notes that this phase continues only until civilian areas are overrun. That phrase signals the transition to Phase 3, where civilian protection becomes secondary to military survival. Phase 3. Dominate the 40-day lockdown. Phase 3 represents the most crucial and controversial aspect of CONPLAN 8888. When zombie threats overwhelm civilian authority, all military personnel retreat to fortified positions for a minimum of 40 days. During this lockdown period, there are no rescue missions, no civilian assistance, and no exceptions. The military's sole focus becomes preserving command and control structures while waiting for zombie threats to diminish through natural processes. The document assumes that most government officials will die within 24 hours of a major outbreak. Cities become uninhabitable, infrastructure collapses completely, and traditional law enforcement disappears. The military's job becomes ensuring that some form of organized authority survives to rebuild civilization. For civilians outside military installations, Phase 3 means complete abandonment. You are on your own for at least 40 days, possibly much longer. Phases 4-5. Stabilize and restore after the 40-day minimum lockdown. Reconnaissance teams venture out to assess the remaining zombie threat and survey the condition of basic infrastructure, water systems, power grids, communications networks, and transportation routes. If the threat has been neutralized naturally, rebuilding efforts begin. If zombies still pose significant dangers, the military remains in lockdown indefinitely. Phase 5 focuses on re-establishing civilian government and restoring normal social functions. However, the document acknowledges that this may take years or decades depending on the severity of the outbreak and the extent of infrastructure damage. The terrifying truth: military limitations buried within the technical specifications of CONPLAN 8888 lies a sobering admission that fundamentally changes how we should think about government protection during major crises. The document states clearly that USTR forces lack sufficient contingency stores of food, water, and basic supplies to support even 30 days of barricaded operations. More critically, STR has no ground combat forces capable of repelling a zombie assault. Read that again. The military created a detailed plan for fighting zombies, while simultaneously acknowledging they don't have the resources or personnel to actually win such a conflict. This isn't incompetence, it's strategic honesty. CONPLAN 8888 forces military planners to confront scenarios where technological superiority, firepower, and traditional tactics become irrelevant. Zombies don't respond to intimidation, propaganda, or negotiation. They can't be bribed, reasoned with, or deterred. They represent pure existential threat that can only be addressed through physical destruction or avoidance. The military's solution is brutally practical: retreat to defensible positions and wait for the threat to diminish naturally. This strategy preserves military leadership and organizational structure while abandoning civilian populations to fend for themselves. From a survival perspective, this means you cannot rely on government assistance during major social crises. Emergency services will be overwhelmed. Military forces will withdraw to protected installations, and civilian authority will collapse rapidly, training an army in plain sight. The entertainment connection: here's where CONPLAN 8888 becomes truly fascinating from a psychological operations perspective. Consider the timeline carefully. CONPLAN 8888 development 2009-2010 The Walking Dead premiere October 31, 2010 World War Z film production 2011-2013 The Last of Us video game June 2013 Zombieland films 2009-2019 28 days later franchise 2002-2007 Whether through coordination or coincidence, millions of Americans consumed zombie survival training through entertainment media during the exact period when the military was developing and declassifying their official zombie response plan. Think about what zombie entertainment has taught you about crisis response, resource management. Every zombie movie emphasizes careful rationing of food, water, ammunition, and medical supplies. Viewers learn to think strategically about resource allocation during scarcity. Team dynamics. Zombie stories consistently show that survival depends on group cooperation, complementary skills, and effective leadership. They also demonstrate how quickly teams fall apart due to personality conflicts, resource disputes, or leadership failures. Threat assessment. Audiences learn to evaluate risks constantly, identify escape routes, recognize danger signs, and make split-second decisions under pressure. Basic survival skills. Zombie media teaches viewers about first aid, food preservation, water purification, improvised weapons, and shelter construction. Trust and betrayal. Perhaps most importantly, zombie entertainment consistently shows that other humans pose greater threats than the zombies themselves. Viewers learn to be suspicious of strangers, verify claims, and prepare for betrayal. Urban vs. rural survival. Zombie stories universally portray cities as death traps and rural areas as safer alternatives, teaching audiences to value self-sufficiency, agricultural knowledge, and defensive positioning. Whether intentional or not, zombie entertainment has provided basic survival training to an entire generation of Americans. The lessons aren't specific to zombie scenarios. They apply to any situation involving social breakdown, resource scarcity, and the collapse of normal authority structures. Survival strategy. The critical first 48 hours. If a genuine crisis emerged, whether biological, environmental, or social, research suggests you would have approximately 48 hours before complete systemic breakdown. Your actions during this narrow window determine whether you become a casualty or a survivor. Immediate urban evacuation. Cities become death traps during any major crisis due to population density, resource scarcity, and infrastructure vulnerabilities. Urban areas concentrate millions of people into small geographic spaces with minimal food storage, limited water reserves, and complex supply chains that break down rapidly. During emergencies, hospitals become infection centers as panicked citizens seek medical attention. Police stations get overrun by crowds seeking weapons and protection. Fire departments abandon their posts to protect their own families. Transportation systems shut down, trapping people in increasingly dangerous urban environments. Your priority must be immediate evacuation to rural areas with natural defensive advantages, food production capabilities, and smaller populations. Strategic location selection. Ideal survival locations share several characteristics: distance from major population centers, natural water sources, agricultural potential, defensive positioning, and existing infrastructure that can be adapted for long-term habitation. Mountain cabins, rural farms, ranch properties, and homesteads in agricultural regions offer the best combination of resources and security. These locations typically have wells or springs for water independence, garden space, or farmland for food production, existing structures that can be fortified, tool storage, and equipment for self-sufficiency. Local communities with practical skills.